Hey everyone, it's Alexander again. Today we will be going through our second part of our two-part series on creating use-based NFTs on Flow. In this part, we'll be doing a really brief video, sort of going through how to implement these use-based NFTs into a React.js website. Now be forewarned though, that this website that we'll be taking a look at is already fully built. We won't really be starting from scratch and building up this website. So it will be a really, relatively short video looking through this React.js website, going through line by line how to implement these NFTs, and then giving you guys sort of a starter website that you can use for your potential projects. Going back to the grant program really briefly, like I said in the last video, we are giving out $500 to a number of different developers who use the NFTs, the NFT contracts for our conditional NFTs on Flow. So if that's interesting to you, definitely make sure to watch this video, sort of learn how we implemented these use-based NFTs and see how you could potentially, develop your own website with these NFTs. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check that down below. We'll have a link for that. But anyways, let's get into the video. So first off, let's take a look at basically what this website will look like. And then we'll sort of look through how the website works and allow you guys to sort of peruse it on your own at a later time. So open up the website really briefly. It'll just take a quick second. But yeah, like I said, with this video, we're sort of just gonna take a look at the website, look through the code itself, not necessarily write any code because it's already written out. And then after that, you guys can go check it out in more depth by yourselves with the GitHub repo linked below. So yeah, let's take a look. So first off, we have just a very basic React.js website. If we log in here, we can connect my Blocto wallet really briefly. And we can see here, these are the use-based NFTs. Like I said in the last video, a really good example of use-based NFTs is using them for tickets, for example, right? Like you have an NFT, you buy a ticket of an NFT, you use it for a concert, and then you still retain that ticket itself, but it's held as an NFT that's already been expired. So taking a look here, you can mint your ticket, buy your ticket, select that place that fits you. After minting, your ticket will be stored inside your wallet, and you can use it in the use ticket section. We can see here we have two selections, the LA Lakers versus the Boston Celtics, and the Golden State Warriors versus the Brooklyn Nets. They have a price of 3 flow and 5 flow. We press mint here. We have a pop-up that basically says to approve it. We'll press approve. And while that is sort of processing, that sort of minting, let's take a look at the ticket section. So this section basically is a script that goes through all of our so it goes through our account, looks through any NFTs held. As you can see here, we have 2 tickets, LA Lakers versus Boston Celtics, Golden State Warriors versus Brooklyn Nets. And then we've used both these tickets here, but they are still retained within our My Tickets section as NFTs, but they're just expired NFTs. So if we refresh, we'll see we have a new ticket here, LA Lakers versus Boston Celtics. But this one is not used, right? See, this here says this ticket was used already. This one here says use your ticket. So we press use our ticket. It'll have a pop-up like before. We can approve it. And basically in the back end, or through the blockchain, we will basically be using that ticket via one of our transactions. And yep, there we go. So as you see there, ticket was used already, so it has been expired in the blockchain and can't be used again, but we still retain it within our account, so we can still check out some of our old tickets, which is, I think, really cool. So that's a great example of how to use use-based NFTs within sort of a Flow website. Obviously, if you want to take a look at the last video or the NFTs, you can see the GitHub below for that. But right now, we're going to take a quick look on basically how this website works, and then you guys can go check it out by yourselves a little bit later. So let's start with the flow folder. This is very reminiscent of our last sort of video. Right here, we have our get use based NFT script. So this basically goes to the contract, looks through the contract, finds your NFTs, gets the IDs, and then loops through and gets the sort of collection borrower review resolver, and appends it into an array and returns it to the user. Moving on, we have our mint NFT function. This basically is a transaction that looks at the admin, borrows an NFT from the admin, and sets up the NFT collection, gets the payment, and basically mints the NFT to the holder. And then this is our last transaction. This is the update use-based NFTs transaction. This basically imports the use-based NFTs, looks through, gets an admin ref, and then borrows them and basically updates them to say, hey, we had this NFT within our collection, and we just basically turned it from non-expired to expired. So all very sort of repetitive in that sense. Now, going off of our sort of cadence folders, looking at our sort of services, these are, things that we'll be calling, functions like JavaScript functions that we'll be calling later. They sort of import the flow package. And basically, actually, before we go into this, let's take a look at the package.json really quickly. Right here, we'll be importing, our biggest one is obviously the flow package. The main flow package was @onflow/FCL, SHA-3, and style components, all pretty basic Next.js right there. So now going back to services, this is a JavaScript async function that basically queries the blockchain and finds any function that aligns with the sort of balance that we're looking for, and then returns that sort of balance to the function caller. And then we export that via this sort of export const function at the bottom. Now, moving on, we'll have a get NFTs function. This is also an async function that puts in fcl.query. And this cadence is basically the cadence that we put here for that script. We pass in two arguments, address and t.address. And that will return the results to the caller. And then next, we have our last two functions, which is our mint use base and our update use based. With our mint use base, we'll be putting in inputs of ID, name, description, thumbnail, and price. This basically allows us to mint this NFT to the holder with all these sort of params as well. And then after that, we're going to update the use-based NFT with arguments of ID and uint64. This also comes with the authorizer sort of fcl.currentUser, which we'll have to take a look at a little bit later. But basically, it just allows us to update the use-based NFT within our collection. And then lastly, this is sort of our config. This is basically allows us to log into the blockchain or sort of connect our wallet to the to the website. As you see here, we're just using a sort of REST API here, which allows us to sort of log in with our wallet, but use the sort of REST framework instead. So now moving on. Yeah, so now going to authorization, we sort of see here, we have an address. We do have a private key, which is unsecure, but this account is basically just a, sort of public, beta account that anyone can really access. So don't really worry about that too much. There's no tokens in here, so go crazy if you want, but we'll basically be signing this transaction from the sort of admin account and allowing us to sort of mint and update use-based NFTs via that. So now going into our sort of main pages here, we have app.js, which is sort of default, and then we have an index.js as well, which is our main sort of page that we're looking at right here. So now going back here, We have our head, React useState, useEffect, importing our FCL, importing our navbar, our main. We'll be going to these components a little bit later, but importing our services as well. We're then declaring 3 sort of use states, one with logged in, one balance, one NFTs. This allows us to sort of log in the user. This allows us to see the balance of the user. And this allows us to see the NFTs of the user. And then we basically have 2 big functions that go off of that. One is the get balance, so that calls the sort of flow script service get balance function. And then we set the balance, or use state balance, via the const balance that we get returned from that function. And then next, we have a get NFTs function, which allows us to await the script service, get NFTs via user address, and then set the NFTs via the response that we get from that. So these 2 functions basically populate these use states here, one with our balance of the user, and then one with the NFTs of the user. And then we have a use effect that basically updates these 2 use states here whenever we see a change in the user address or whenever we see a change in the balance. With here, we see that we subscribe the current user, so we access the current user, we make sure that there is a user, make sure nothing's really gone wrong there, and then we get the balance, and we get the new balance, and we get the new NFTs from the holder. And lastly, we have some head, so this is just basically metadata for the page itself, and then a navbar in main. And we pass in our user, our functions here, and then our user address as well here as well. So that's pretty much it for index.js. Going into sort of our components here. We have our main component. This is essentially the component that wraps the entire sort of function, or index.js. Here we have a wrapper, and then we have a mint section and a my ticket section. Mint section obviously is this, mint your ticket here. Your my ticket section is this, just showing your tickets. And then we have the styled section below it that basically allows the styling for the section as a whole. Now moving on to our mint section. This is the section that we saw here. This basically imports the use-based transactions, gets a callback that basically allows us to mint the NFTs that we see here. We have some basic styling that says mint your ticket here, a paragraph, and then here we have basically these 2 tickets wrapped around these ticket wrappers. And then here is sort of where our big thing happens. We have a mint ticket with a random Los Angeles Lakers x Boston Celtics, classic basketball game, and then NBC Sports. So just sort of the inputs that we want to mint the tickets, and then we mint those to the user below. The user logged in. Next, moving on to my ticket section. This is a use-based NFT transaction service. This is basically allowing us to, as we saw here, get the my tickets and then also use the tickets via that button that we saw earlier. So like I said, this basically is a ticket section. We are mapping, so we're getting the NFTs from the user, and then we're basically running a for loop that's basically creating NFT wrappers with each NFT within the collection. And then on here we see is our big on-click function where we use the ticket and we pass in this NFT ID to use it. And if we don't have any IDs, we just say you don't have any tickets, buy one. So really nothing too complicated there. And lastly, really wrapping up, this basically allows us to log in the user to the blockchain via their Blockdo or other Lilico or wallet or anything of that sort. So we log in via FCL and then logging out via FCL and authenticate. And then obviously just basic user address, user balance, very, very simple navbar there as well. So as you can see there, that sort of concludes a really, really quick and fast look at how to use these NFTs inside a React.js website. If you got lost or anything of that was complicated, make sure to look below at the GitHub for the NFTs themselves, the flow contracts, but the flow contracts powering this React.js website, and then also look at the sort of code for this website as well. With both of those, you should be really, really good. If you do have any questions, make sure to put it in the comments below. I will make sure to get to you. Also, make sure to check out the grant program that we've just developed. We will be giving out $500 to a couple of lucky developers who are planning on using these NFT contracts in their own projects. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to follow and check out those GitHub repos.